Everyone, and thank you so very much for joining me for another episode of Talking Cloud. Man, now, this is where we talk about cloud computing, anything cloud, all things cloud, nothing's, no holds barred, with a bit of a slant maybe to security. Now, if you look at the landscape today, come on, what isn't or doesn't involve cloud? Everything is cloud, and there's new stuff happening every day. And, we love to have conversations with just really amazing people in the industry about cloud, and today is certainly no exception. Now, I've said it many times. I'm going to say it again. You know me, I am the Gilligan in the room. I am no professor, but I do know where to find the experts. And today we're going to have to roll our sleeves up, ladies and gentlemen. We might have to ask Ram to repeat a couple of times, because I know he's really just got a mound of experience in architecting and building technologies and secure environments, both on-prem and in the cloud. And if you just look at his background, 6+ years as a senior architect and practice director, and I'm diving in. There's many other experiences before this at Tech Democracy. This was for better than 6 years, then was at Cox Enterprises as the enterprise architect for security. He had several years at GE Energy, then on to another company you may have heard of, Oracle, and a member of their technical staff as a consultant, Pure Storage, senior security architect, founder of a company I'm interested to hear about, Parent Orbit, and that's continuing today. And he currently is the director security architecture for Guardant Health. Super excited to have him here today. Sitaraman, Lakshminarayanan, or I'm just going to get away with saying Ram. Ram, it's great to have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you, Grant. You got my name correct, Sitaraman Lakshminarayanan, but easy, I go by Ram. Thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Now, obviously, I just was rattling off the last 10 or so years of your career, but maybe, to give a little context and z-axes for the listeners, I'm going to let you kind of tell a little bit more about your background, your career, what you're doing, and what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you. I've been in this profession for about 20 years. Started out as a software developer, tangentially working on security-related stuff, on and off, as we built software application, and that's what got me into looking at cryptography, encryption, digital signatures, identity and access. So slowly moved into, as we start building large-scale systems, my interest was more about securing the systems, and eventually pivoted into full-time doing security. I've led the practice at Tech Democracy for the identity and access management. Moved into GE Energy. That was the first IoT smart grid security. And then moved to Bay Area, started at Oracle and Pure Storage, and now at Guardant Health, leading the security architecture team. In between, I moved out of security to find my own startup, Parent Orbit. It is kind of still running passively, but no active involvement. But it was, as everyone goes through this process when you're in Bay Area, you find a problem. So my kids were younger, going through daycare, I was talking to a couple of daycare centers on managing their billing, and that's what got me into it. It's still processing about a couple of $1 million worth of payments, but it's running completely passive right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. So it really was just out of necessity, and you kept hearing, "Gosh, we're out of control. How to run this daycare?" So you sat down with them and figured it out and wrote a solution.
That's right. I did that for a couple of years and then moved back into security.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. So, I'm interested to hear your views in particular, with your roots in software development, and obviously that environment has changed and evolved quite a bit. But you talked about something that seems to become enormous, and it's the whole issue of identity and access, and the subsequent management of all of that, because everything now is having identities, right? I mean, talk a little bit about how you see that landscape, because it seems like that's becoming a huge challenge for companies.
Yes, it is. So you got it right, because as people build software in various forms that are running on smaller devices, call it IoT, or on-prem applications, the legacy systems, what do you call it, or cloud application, cloud native, whatever, right? Everything has some form of identity. You can call it machine identity, service identity, or the human identities. Even within the human identity, there are two types of identity: workforce identity and customer identity. Customer identity is the one that are focused on your end user customers, and workforce is more about your employees accessing internal applications.
So, some organizations would. I've heard them talk about the customer as the users internally, but you're bifurcating it between an employee inside the company and then someone that is literally external. Is that what you mean?
To me, identity is always one. You're authenticating users, whether it is employees or contractors or customers or whatever. You have a single place to go and validate their credentials, and then grant them access to based on who they are, right? Whether you're a customer or an employee or a contractor, you get access to certain resources. And that's where the access management comes in, which has also taken a complete full circle in the last 20 years. It might have repeated more than once. I don't know.
What do you mean?
The access on the on-prem applications back 15 years ago used to be completely segmented. Each and every commercial product you buy has to have its own access management that you have to configure. Everyone would kind of piggyback on your Active Directory as a default one. If not, they have their own way to manage their roles and groups. And then came the various slew of access management products, the single sign-on products, like the Tivoli from IBM, SiteMinder, Oracle acquired a company called Oblex. Various of these products came in to say, hey, let's centralize these access management into one place, where you would go in and log in, and then that's when the federated identity came across. But then the access management are all managed within those central place. Novel Access Management, one of the consulting company I used to work for, got acquired by Novel. Novel had the reverse proxy-based solution, which is now everybody calling it as a zero trust access. That was one of the very few products in that time frame. Access management was governed to reverse proxy. So now we are back to this cloud world where every application, every SaaS provider has their own access management. So we are back to addressing the same problem where we kind of lost that centralization and then moved into the area where every SaaS application has its own access management. Every cloud account, multi-cloud account has its own access policies. And as a security team, you need to be able to understand various access policies that exist and how it's mapped to different types of identities, whether it is service accounts or human accounts. And then how it's used to gain access to serve the function, whether it is the application or the user need. So at the end of the day, any breach ever happens, if you actually dig deeper, you will see that it's some access misconfiguration somewhere that led someone to exfiltrate data or read too much information than they're supposed to.
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole notion of change management, change control, access control, on premise seemed to be something we wrestled down fairly well. And then we went into the cloud and it was like the genie's out of the bottle, and now we have to wrestle it down again. Is this going to be done, do you think, through another abstraction and utilizing APIs that are going to run somewhat? They're going to harmonize them across multiple cloud vendors to start to try to solve the same problem, or how's that going to work?
From a cloud infrastructure standpoint, you'd probably see someone coming up with a solution where you can manage identity and access across multiple cloud, where you can say, I want to give access to S3 or to a queue or something else from one place. Mm-hmm. But they still have to work across various interoperable standards. Each one has their own way of defining policies today.
Right.
Azure does it different than Amazon. Google Cloud does it slightly different than what others. And then, so that's on the infrastructure side of things. And then SaaS side of things, you still have the same problem that existed before. You're right that in the old days, change control had everything contained to some extent. With the cloud, what happened is as we shifted more to the left, given more in the name of expediency as DevOps teams spin up resources and everything else, they have to be educated to understand the impact of what resource and access they are giving. And then the security team can then keep an eye on the whole impact of the solution.
Yeah.
This solution we need to look for is not just don't look at it individually as the resource and access. Look at the holistic of how applications are connected and granted access within and outside your organization, so that you can actually take action in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. Most of the challenges I face today is it tells you something is over provisioned, but I don't know which application is using it. Then it takes a cycle to find out who has access to what or why it's done the way it's done.
This bucket is misconfigured without a whole lot of context or detail on so what, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. When a tool tells you that this bucket has read-write permissions to things, why is it? Is it given access for a specific reason for an application? Or is this someone who didn't understand what they were doing?
Yeah. Right. Got frustrated and finally just put in an asterisk. Right? Yeah. I mean, that's right. I've heard developers talk about that, but I think that's also giving rise to some really exciting new solutions. I know a dear friend of mine, Shira Shamban, who started a company called Solvo, that's really focused on shifting left with security, right? Yeah. Interrogating code before it gets pushed out and is proceeding through the development cycle, actually doing interrogation before it goes, which I think, there's a number of new companies also in the supply chain space. I know we both have mutual contacts that are working on new exciting things. We had Venkat on the program talking about access ops. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, views, comments about that whole concept of access ops and how that fits with an IAM solution that maybe is out there or is evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like, and I know this is a long question, Ram, but when I first got into cloud security in earnest, I was working for my buddy Zohar, who has since moved on to do other exciting things, but sold Dome 9 to Checkpoint. That was a mere 3+ years ago. However, back then it was called cloud security, right? But today, that has become so stratified. I mean, there are so many facets that have been sliced into that diamond, so to speak. And I don't think we're done. When I think about something like Access Ops versus IAM. And so that's why I'm asking the question is, do you see this continuing to evolve with new needs, despite some of the IAM solutions that are out there?
Yes, there is a new need. Venkat, I think, he's the founder and CEO at Stack Identity.
Mm-hmm.
We met, he listened to my one of conference talk, and that's how we got connected. And then as we started talking, and we had a lot more overlapping experience. He was IBM Tivoli access manager guy, and at that time I was working on Oblex. A 15-minute chat turned into a 2-hour conversation. And lately, he's working more on the Access Ops at Stack Identity. And what they're doing is slightly new, like addressing the problem, which is I kind of touched upon, connecting the dots between your resource and identity to the actual applications. So then you get a complete view of which application is connected through what path and what identities have access to what type of resources. So this way, when there is an alert from any tool you're using, hey, you have an over-provisioned account or whatever it is, this gives the security teams to go and look at here is how this whole flow is working. Now I can either talk to the right team, or actually I can go and take action to limit the permissions without breaking other applications. So that's been the challenge, because every time alert fatigue, you have heard of this term.
Sure.
Every security team gets too many alerts, and the challenge is in trying to triage the alert to see whether it is a false positive or not, and getting more information from the actual team that developed the application before you can close the loop. Yep. The cycle time can be, if it's not automated, it can be anywhere from a week to months, depending on the size of the organization and the complexity of the system. Yep. And it's also one of those things like don't break it, right? Because you got an alert, but I don't want to remove any permission because I don't know what I'm going to break.
Yeah. And
that usually becomes your dead weight that gets carried forward until a breach happens somewhere.
Yeah. I think of, in my mind's eye, Ram sees a stick house, a house made of toothpicks that, it's standing, and don't move that one.
Yeah.
It just, that's my mind's eye kind of goes there. But that's what I'm just imagining this very fragile construct that took a while to build. It's finally standing. Please don't touch it. Don't break it. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's also one of the things that people are working on trying to solve. We spoke about earlier, and that is, pushing out something that's over privileged or too permissive. But this is a different way of looking at and solving, I think, a different problem. In my mind, I guess the one thing that doesn't fit with that analogy, Ram, is the fact that construct really, in reality, as it goes into the cloud, if down underneath, I'm using Mongo, or I'm using, pick a database, and I decide I want to change.
Yeah.
I can do that fairly easily without a whole lot of disruption up above, right?
That's right, because
and that is the problem.
That is the problem. If you think from a developer standpoint or DevOps SRE standpoint, they are granting applications to the resources. They usually look at it from a single application deployment, right? Mm-hmm. But then and everybody has VPC peering enabled, various connections enabled for whatever reason, and then as you start to connect the dots and look at it as a whole system view, that's when it's like, okay, I have this network access granted for these 2 machines for whatever reason, and then this one is open to the public. Then you will have to traverse this to, okay, if a breach were to happen, it's not a single thing where this particular machine is compromised. Now you have granted more access than you needed to other adjacent system. Through that, you can now gain access to your critical data, whether it is your database or S3 buckets or anything else.
Yep.
And that's the crux of the problem that one needs to solve. And so far, and that's what having come from software development background, it's much easier for me to ask these questions, work with the teams to say, what are you building? What is your least permissions that are needed? Yep. But the architecture team usually cannot scale because every development team goes faster. And if you slow down everybody, then you don't have a product built, right? So we'll have to strike a balance to move. But then that's why you need tools like this to get a complete visibility of the path as well as various access.
One of the things I guess I'm thinking about is, look, you mentioned already, alerts are the security team's spam, right? I mean, yeah. Because they're inundated with them, and then they're not sure if they're real or not, and then it's everyone there's a so what and an additional step, and you're spot on. And so I'm just, how is the ability to connect the dots enable something different to notify the administrator? What does that do? I mean, how is it not just creating a new alert?
So let's take what are you trying to secure, right? You're trying to secure the data that is there, that you're producing or you're consuming from various sources, right? So the data is a new oil, whatever term you want to use. So at the end of the day, we are there to protect the data right. Security. And you can look at it from a privacy angle. You can look at it from a security angle. You can look at it from IP or however you want. You're trying to protect the data. Now, these data in various forms, whether it is S3 buckets, data lakes, databases, however it is, are given access to various applications. The applications running on EC2 containers, you serverless, however you want, various APIs. Now, and then these are then exposed back to the customers through web applications or mobile applications. And then you have infrastructure where people have to log in to do their job, troubleshooting, whatever it is, and it's all. Then suddenly you see a simple application with a database and a backend API service and a web application now turned into hundreds of resources. And then now you can contain one path, but then now you have hundreds of paths to gain access to the system. The good analogy I always use is look around your house and then see how many paths somebody can break into your house. Okay, you can come through the front door or back door or garage door, and then they can come through the roof, come through the windows, and several other ways. So and if you call your security company, they will put sensors on each and every place. But then if you leave the keys under your mat when you leave the house, then somebody can actually come in, goes unnoticed. So that's what this is, right? So access issues are going to be a lot more critical, whether you're looking at it from a zero trust angle or looking at it from security and privacy and data security angle. How, instead of just sending an alert saying you are given access to someone else more than what they need, administrative or read write or whatever it is, look at the application and then see, do we have enough controls in place to contain the damage? Can we go and then say, is this given for a valid reason or not? And how is this going to impact if something else were to happen? Then you can you can add more specific alert and monitoring to actually say, okay, now if this particular mission is compromised, I want to be notified more because this has broader access than what I intend to give.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know Venkat had spoken about, breach prediction as opposed to an alert. Can you talk a little bit about how that's going to be different for a security team to be more efficient?
If knowing what I know about what StackInit is doing, right? When you look at breach prediction, it's more about how in how many different ways can someone access the data? The data is in your database or S3 or wherever it is. How many different ways can they access, and what is the easiest path to get to the data? Normally, I've seen these alerts many times. When you open SSH to the internet, you get an alert saying, hey, something is opened, whether to the internet or to anyone else specific, it's open, right?
Right.
And then they will look at it and say, okay, so what's the big deal? I've opened this for a specific reason.
Right.
But what they don't connect the dots is that same machine may be connected through some other paths to the data that you are looking. The good example that you can go back and look at is the Capital One breach on server side request forgery, right? So that happened because the metadata service was granted access. So the whole report, it tells you the whole details of how the connected system works. So the breach prediction index is about how many different ways are you granting access to various services, who has access to the metadata service, and if any one machine is compromised, can I traverse through any path that I have to get to the data? Is what the main thing.
It's really it's reasoning all of those attributes as well, right? I mean, it's kind of what ifing they're all connected. What if someone can, and then summarizing that with it's highly likely or not. At least, I mean, that's kind of how I understand it, right? The higher the number, the higher likelihood someone's going to be able to exploit the access that you have, the configuration you have.
Yeah, if it's exploited, then you can go and say, okay, now this is a valued asset. It has your credit card information or whatever domain you're working on, healthcare data or financial data or customer data, IP data. So you can classify them. If you're just storing some bunch of application logs, you don't really matter. You can just tag them as saying like, okay, just ignore. But if you have anything that is critical and you don't want to lose, now you have a way to actually see various paths that are connected to it.
So I'm curious with your work, I just want to pull on this thread a little bit having to do with the whole world of electronic records and the whole health experience and where that is compared to where it seems like the promise was several years ago with things like Epic, right? And it seems like we're still a long way because of HIPAA and all this other stuff. I guess I'm kind of just throwing out a big ball of conversation around where we are leveraging the cloud for a better health experience. It still seems like everybody's doing a little differently.
Yes, just to warn you, I am not a healthcare expert, so I've only been in this industry for about a year and still focusing more on the security aspects of healthcare related to what Guardant is doing. Yes, people are moving to the cloud in some way or fashion. We are still a hybrid shop, but there is a good amount of cloud presence. The Epic and others, they provide the SaaS service, right? So it's they're moving in the right direction, but because of the regulation and everything else, it is going to be slower than any other industry. Yeah.
So I'm curious, what are you seeing just from your perspective, all the things you're doing? How is, the common buzzwords, RAM, are zero trust. SASE is quite a hot topic, right? Secure Access Service Edge.
Yeah.
What do you how do you see the world evolving and where things are really going? And did you get a chance to go to reInvent? I didn't.
No, I didn't go to reInvent this year. But so I'm looking forward to, we have somebody from my team is there right now, but looking forward to what's coming out from the Amazon side of things.
Right.
On the SASE or Zero Trust, you can call it buzzword or however you want, but that's the reality, right? You have people working from various places. Network is kind of, there's no defined perimeter, like there's no on-prem as a only infrastructure. Things are moving to the edge because that's where more compute is happening, more breach. Initial one is your laptop being compromised, but then how do you secure it, right? So you cannot, the way I approach zero trust is you cannot just buy a vendor product, no matter which vendor it is, and then assume that it is working. You still have to do the work of controlling the access, defining the perimeter, defining the segmentation. I'm actually loving it right now because having come from software security world, finally, system security is being approached with how do I build security from within? How do I build systems with security in mind? How do I look at identity and access? And privacy and encryption are going to be even more important as various compliance regulations come in, or people are a little bit more conscious about what data they want to share.
It's been a long time coming, though, hasn't it?
It's a long time coming, and the generation certainly it's going to be even more important.
Yeah. I've said for a long time, Ram, the internet. This is very high level, right? But the internet is Woodstock that we want to treat like an opera. I mean, it's that original vision of free love and sharing and everybody's great, but whoever thought that we were going to be using it as our core backbone for our business? Not only us, but every business on the planet, right? The transformation was remarkable. And from its inception and design, we trust everyone to where really it should be completely opposite, right? I mean, it's pretty remarkable how, and it is refreshing to hear conversation about how do we make things secure from the get-go, from the development stage. How do we get it smarter? I think that it has definitely been a long time coming. And I think it's interesting that data, while it seems like it's been the cornerstone of computing from its inception, we're just now seemingly figuring out we should have started there first, because it would surely be a different world today, wouldn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So data security and privacy are going to be a lot more important. And privacy, just like you cannot build on security after you build the application, you cannot build on privacy without thinking through the security aspects. You need to define how your data is going to be stored, who's going to be accessing, how are you going to be encrypting, where is going to be the key management, and then you have different countries saying, I want the data to be within my own territory. So you have to figure out how is that going to work. So there are quite a few people working on this. So that's going to be another area. Talking to a few of my ex-colleagues at Oracle about looking at how decentralized identity is going to play. So that's going to be another area that I'm keeping my eyes open and see how things will play. Yeah, those are interesting times. Yeah.
Yeah. I've said before, ladies and gentlemen listening, I'm sure you've heard me say it before. One of the, if not the most exciting thing about this industry, in my opinion, is no matter when you get in, you're getting in at the beginning of something, right? It's just fascinating, and it's really, really exciting. And it seems like we're in a really accelerated phase of innovation because everything is becoming a service. Yep. I mean, when I say everything, I mean transportation. Uber's, kind of changed our way of thinking about that. And that, to me, is just opened up. It's just opened up, certainly my mind on anything can be a service. Everything is a service because it can, in the way we're living our lives, it's pretty remarkable, right? And exciting where it's going.
Yep, I'm much more excited with as everyone starts to build security within. It'll slowly make the world a better place. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also opens up new frontiers for solving new challenges because, we're somewhat linear in the way we approach and solve our problems. And it seems like CSPM and the whole configuration management was kind of that foundation. But we're moving now farther down into some new knots that are going to need untied as we get these new technologies incorporated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. I think I forgot there's a new term for it which combines CSPM, workload, and everything together into the CIEM, CSPM, and workload identity. Everything combined into some new category. I forgot, cannot remember right now. Came across Gartner a new term for that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, leave it to Gartner. I think they probably seek out and hire an MBA in acronyms. So they can come up with, the very best terms. But gosh, we know many organizations pay the Gartner tax, don't they?
Yeah.
So, well, hey, this has really been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed speaking with you. I want to thank you for taking so much time with us today, and look forward to having a chance to have you come back if you'd like.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Talking Cloud in the books. I just had a really great conversation with, let's just call him Ram. And I say that because, I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to give it my very best shot again. Sitaraman, Lakshminarayanan.
Pretty good. Thank you.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Ram, thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. I really appreciate you listening. We got another episode of Talking Cloud in the books, and I really enjoyed this one. It's fun talking about the future and where we're going because, man, the one thing we know for sure is we're going to continue to see a lot of exciting new change and new development and new problems to solve. And I look forward to having you back on the next episode of Talking Cloud. And again, share, tell your friends, and thanks very much. I appreciate you listening. Have a great day.